gratitude to God. Now, before I go on to the second reason, let me explain some implications of that. Because the Reformers were so concerned that the church sing because praise is demanded, they wanted the church to sing quality music. They wanted the church to sing well. They wanted music designed specifically for the church because the praise of God demands the best that the church can do. Although the text, that is what they sang, was most important, neither Calvin nor Luther would have anything to do with the modern notion in churches today that the melodies are incidental, may be of poor quality, and for that matter could just as well be taken from secular musicians. They wouldn't have anything to do with that modern notion. That's a common misunderstanding today, especially with regard to Luther. If you would ask most people today, they would say that when Luther taught the church to sing, he wrote the verses himself, but he borrowed the melodies from the taverns, from the pubs, from the ale houses of the day. He listened to what they were singing there and adopted those melodies and styles for the church. And that misunderstanding of Luther is especially dangerous in mission circles today, where missionaries and evangelists trying to draw people from the neighborhood listen to the music of the neighborhood and say, we're going to use that melody and that style, and we're going to sing the words of the gospel to that in church. And that simply isn't true. It's not the case that Luther used bar tunes for his Reformation, and therefore we may use rap style and hip-hop music and the melodies of the country western songs in the congregation. That appeal to Luther's use of bar tunes is a mistake, but it comes from a misunderstanding of the German word bar form, spelled just as it sounds, bar form, and has nothing to do with pubs, but refers to a certain kind of music that had at least 2 and probably 4 lines to a stanza, each of which had a pattern of A, B, and the Germans called that bar form, and someone misunderstood that one time and thought that was a reference to music that came from the taverns. That wasn't the Reformed way. That wasn't the interest of Luther and Calvin. Associations matter. What one thinks about and is reminded of when he first hears a melody and a style is very, very important. It has everything to do with whether the tune is appropriate for praising God in His sanctuary or not. I was never so embarrassed one time when I was given an assignment for a course on missions, and the professor said that we had to visit a Saturday evening service, or an evening service perhaps at a certain congregation where it was designed for the neighborhood. And sitting there in the darkened auditorium, up came under the spotlight 2 young men with low-riding baggy pants and ball caps put on backwards, and they began rapping or hip-hopping, I don't know the difference, Amazing Grace. Their dress was not the greatest concern that I had. The Reformers wanted quality music and quality singing. Calvin's judgment that congregational music must be of high quality comes out when he says that there needs to be a difference between the music you may sing in your home and the music that is fitting for public worship. He said, there must always be a concern that the song be neither light nor frivolous, but have gravity and majesty, as St. Augustine says. And thus there is a great difference between the music one makes to entertain men and the songs which are sung in the church in the presence of God and His angels. Gravity and majesty. The Church of Jesus Christ wants good music as well as the right words, because the praise of God demands music that's fit for His honor and glory. Calvin was so concerned about the quality of music, and I'm still explaining and applying this first point. The first reason for singing in church is that the praise of God demands it. Calvin was so concerned about quality music that when he heard the singing of the people and remarked about the singing of the people that it sounded like a bunch of cows bellowing in a barn, that he determined to remedy that by training the children to sing during the week and instructing the schoolmasters how to teach the children so that the children could take the lead in church on Sunday and the adults could eventually begin to sing well. So determined were the Reformers that the singing is good. Good. Well, here isn't the place to try to argue for exclusive psalmody, even though the Protestant Reformed churches sing almost exclusively the Psalms. The Reformers, though they differed a little bit in that regard, the Reformers to a man said, let the church sing psalms. And though even those like Luther, who added other songs to the repertoire of the church's music, would have been astonished at churches today who say, we don't want to sing the Psalms at all. No, the Reformers wanted the Psalms especially because the Psalms have no equal as they magnify God as the one who is worthy to be praised. But the church has not forgotten that reason. We have not forgotten that reason. We still are able to ask our children, why do we sing in church? And all of them would be able to say, because the praise of God demands it, and we are called to show forth His praises, who called us out of darkness into light. We love God. We want to magnify Him. But the second reason we have, the Roman Catholic Church had. And though I say we have, it may be the case that not all of us have, and this is my burden, that the church not forget this. Singing in public worship, in addition to be for the praise of God, is for the building up of the church of Christ, the edifying of the believers, the growth of the saints, the strengthening of the people of God. Singing has that in view too. Singing in public worship has not only a vertical aim, but a horizontal aim. We are thinking not only about God, though especially about God, we are thinking also about the fellow believers in the congregation. That's a Reformation reminder. That's the legacy of the 16th century work of God in the church through Luther and Calvin. Singing is a means in the hand of God to build up the saints. As the people of God gather together and lift up the words of the Scripture in adoration to God, it's a powerful tool to cause the people of God to be, in their own personal lives, reformed. And that's why I give the title to the speech tonight, what I do, music's indispensable place in Reformation. Reformation. It's not just, and this is the point, that the Reformers said we must concentrate on music, liturgy, and worship, but the Reformers recognized that music was God's instrument to correct the church. Music was the instrument of God to bring reform to the deformed church. Music has that power in the church. Ephesians 5 and Colossians 3. I forgot to remind the committee to read that passage tonight, but let me just point out that Ephesians 5 says that we are not to be drunk with wine, wherein is excess, but be filled with the Spirit, speaking to yourselves in psalms and hymns and spiritual songs. We know that passage. Speaking to yourselves in psalms, hymns, and spiritual songs. The book to the Colossians in chapter 3, parallel to this, says, let the word of Christ dwell in you richly, in all wisdom, teaching and admonishing one another in psalms and hymns